Welcome, everyone. We have the distinct privilege of being with Reed Summers, who, with his father, Marshall V. Summers, furthered the work of Allies of Humanity, an organization that Marshall Summers started in 1992. And Reed is also the director of the Society for a New Message. Thank you for coming on to this. I guess it'll be a multi-level event, and one that for me has been in the making for many years. Because I have sound coming more from the Facebook over here. Because in the summer of 2005, my own book, Exopolitics, which was credited with founding the fledgling science, according to some, of exopolitics, and that is the study of a populated universe and multiverse, populated and organized by intelligent species and interdimensional civilizations. At that time, I was invited to my first public conference, and I was invited as a keynote speaker by Professor Leo Sprinkle at the University of Wyoming to deliver an exopolitics address. And right there was a very handsome stand by the Allies of Humanity. Mm-hmm. And during the breaks, we struck up a conversation, speaking with each other, and I was really struck by the advanced thinking which was coming out of the people there, because I had just spent this amount of time thinking about the same issues. So I was so struck by that. So I'm very happy that at this time, 12 years later, our paths finally come together. And as I understand it, you are now going out around the communities, giving briefings on the Allies of Humanity. And now with all of the leaks that are coming out about ET disclosure, mm-hmm. at the quasi-official level, that is, you've got at least in the US, you've got organs like the New York Times and CNN dealing with issues of extraterrestrials, which, if you go to the website of Allies of Humanity, which I urge everyone here to do, there's some very deep concerns here. Mm-hmm. And so what I thought is that for the first hour of our 2 hours being together here approximately, you could brief us and bring our audience and myself fully into the perspective of the Allies of Humanity, which is, as I understand it, they are true allies of humanity. These are the views that have been shared by some advanced communities out there, and you'll be telling us all about that. So without further ado, please.
Great, Alfred. Well, thank you for that intro and the opportunity to share what is really a tremendous body of work that's been coming through my father, Marshall V. Summers, for near on 34 years. And it's been a multi-decade journey And the Allies of Humanity briefings are part of that message that has come through my father, and they present a sobering but deeply grounded and clear assessment of the reality of contact that's happening in the world today. It has been happening for some decades. And I feel the Allies briefings really represent kind of one of the first starting points that people should stop at in their journey of exploring the phenomenon around UFOs and contact and disclosure as well. It's perhaps the most clear distillation of decades and decades of research by thousands of individuals around the world that I think has been provided to the world. And what better place to start than a clear objective assessment of what visitation is and what we personally and collectively need to do about it. So I'll talk a little bit about how the Allies briefings came to be, and then I'll just basically present the essence of what the briefings say about contact, what is happening, why it is happening, what it means, and what must we do, each of us, personally and collectively, about contact. So in about the year 1997, my father, Marshall Van Summers, was deep in the process of receiving a communication from an angelic source about the future of our world in what it called a greater community of life, a greater community of worlds in the universe of which we have always been a part. Every minute, hour, and year of human existence has played out in this greater community, and yet we are unaware of it and unprepared for it. And this message coming through my father, which even in the year 1997 was many thousands of pages in length, and which is now called, you can find this message online, it's called The New Message from God. And much of it has been released online for people to read and to hear. Even in 1997, thousands of pages had been given already. And the reality of contact was kind of the emerging next piece of the puzzle being given at that time in Marshall's life. And it was at that time that a remarkable contact was made. And my father was not looking for it, expecting it. In fact, the preparation for it went back many years before 1997. But it was in 1997 that the angelic presence that my father had been working with over many years, receiving these divine communications for the world, which related to our emergence into this universe of life, signaled that another message must be received, but not from the source that he had been connecting with for so many years up to that point. Instead, it would be from a group of off-planet observers who called themselves the Allies of Humanity. And Marshall went through some waves of reluctance and anxiety about what this would be. What am I receiving here? Can I trust this? Is this, where is this going to take me and my family? And though he was involved in the world of contact to some degree, his emphasis more on teaching what he then called the greater community spirituality, a spirituality that is universal to life in the universe, that is being introduced into our world for the first time. And the book, Greater Community Spirituality by Marshall Van Summers, was released in that time frame. You can go read that online. It is an unbelievable cosmological and theological window through which to look into the larger cosmos in which we live. It really is a very special text. And so with reluctance and some anxiety, Marshall accepted to receive this communication coming from this group of off-planet observers called the Allies of Humanity. And it was in 1997 that book 1 of the Allies of Humanity briefings was given. And this was given to Marshall really in a state of revelation, whereby the angelic assembly was acting as the conduits for this communication to be spoken through my father's own voice into an audio recorder, and then to be transcribed and published, which is how all of the revelations he's received have been delivered. And the Allies of Humanity stated that they did not want to use a technological means of conveying their information because it could be tracked, it could be thwarted, maybe even manipulated in some way. And so this spiritual connection was made possible. And of course, Marshall had been engaged in this for years at that point, so his connection was quite strong with the angelic presence. So what came through Marshall in that year was a book of briefings by the Allies of Humanity that really set forth to observe and detail the activities of the hidden extraterrestrial presence in our world, why they're here, who they are, and what they're doing and why, to answer those fundamental questions. And book one of the Allies of Humanity was, for me, an amazing text. Let's see, I was somewhere around 13 years old at the time, and I do remember reading it, certainly on my own initiative, a couple of years later. And what this book opened up was a world of connection, really, a connection with the greater community. And it activates it, it speaks to it, it calls it forth, and it recognizes it in us in a way that is really special. So I really recommend everyone go and read the Allies of Humanity briefings, book one. It's free online, and have that experience for yourself. So this book really opened up a whole world through that would later be revealed in unbelievable detail through Marshall in the years following. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. But the essence of the Allies' message in book one is that we are an emerging world. We are a young adolescent race stepping out of adolescence into adulthood. And we are literally standing at the threshold line in evolution that separates our adolescence from really the emergence of our race as a free and sovereign people in a vast universe of life. This is the step that we're about to take, or maybe the shoe has, left the floor but hasn't landed yet. We're somewhere in the middle of taking this big step at an evolutionary level out into the greater community. And just like an adolescent in a big city stepping out onto the pavement of the big city, we're leaving the familiarity of our home and environment and entering an environment of tremendous influence and challenges and survival, but also greater relationship and connection as well. It's really a greater panorama of reality as we see it here in the world. And yet, to function and survive and even succeed and thrive, we need something. We need a preparation, and we need a set of briefings from those free worlds in our vicinity to tell us about the environment we're stepping out into, and to reveal to us clearly the form of contact that's underway that really is forcing our world out into this greater environment of life. This isn't going to be on our terms. We're being compelled out beyond our doorstep onto the big city streets because contact is underway. Contact has been underway for over 5 decades. It's been underway for a very long time in ancient times, but not in the form it is today. What we're experiencing today is a very different form of contact with a very different agenda and outcome. And heretofore, we, even those who are aware of contact, have not been able to assess this clearly, to assess who is here, why they're here, and what they're doing, and why. And so this is why the Allies of Humanity briefings were sent. And so in the briefings, the Allies both talk about our emerging world, this evolutionary track that all worlds take as they step out into a larger universe of life, and the great challenges that brings. Challenges of going from tribes to nations, going from nations to a world community. The challenge of facing environmental destruction, which the Allies reveal most races who emerge take that course of basically causing vast destruction to their natural environment, rendering them very vulnerable in the future. So we have this beautiful picture provided by the Allies about the process of emerging out of isolation in the universe, where all we do is interact with each other, human to human, to being a world involved and connected to the greater community of worlds, where interaction will occur with other forms of intelligent life. So we have that beautiful picture painted by the Allies of Humanity. And then we have a very sobering expose of the reality of contact as it is occurring now, not by the Allies, but by what they call the intervention. And the intervention is in essence a consortium of groups who are here in the world primarily because of the resources of the world, as well as its strategic position in our local region of space, and the receptivity and usability of the human species. So in essence, as we step out into this larger universe, we don't encounter scientists and enlightened races and ascended masters and all of this. We encounter in the prosaic resource explorers, those willing to make the long journey to get here for a reason, because there's something valuable about this world and about us, humans. And this, the Allies call the intervention. And the intervention is really a set of economic collectives who are here to explore our world, try to integrate themselves into this world and into humanity in order to make this world a part of their collective. And it's not the picture of contact that any of us wanted, for sure. It was sobering at first for Marshall and myself and everyone around him, because naturally we want to think the best and we want to hope for the best, and we want to find something in contact that inspires us, that takes us beyond the limits of the human realm, and gives new possibility to human life, new technology, new realms of social structuring or governance or something. And so we all have this natural optimism facing the unknown, which is entirely appropriate and, well, acceptable, given our long isolation. All we've had is our own imagination and some degree of scientific inspection of the universe through optics and other forms of science. But we haven't had anything to really give us a full heartbeat on what life is like out there, to really wake us up and give us a sober view. So the Allies presents that sober view. It is reality-based, it is grounded in our experience of nature, and it basically paints the picture of life in the universe and the reality of first contact here on Earth in ways that are very plausible, that are verified by the phenomena of contact, such as UFO sightings, abductions, mutilations, implants, and so forth, verified by that phenomenon. And also it's a message that is fundamentally bringing power back to us, the natives. It's not a message that's taking power from us and saying it belongs with an extraterrestrial power. It's putting power in the hands of us, because we are the natives of a new world being discovered for the first time. And we are divided into over 170 nations. We are in contention on almost every imaginable issue. We can't find common ground on much, especially the things that really matter, like the state of our environment. And contact is underway, a very dangerous form of contact, and we are not seeing it clearly and responding to it. And so the Allies of Humanity bring forth that perspective. They talk about what the intervention is doing, and they present its 4 fundamental activities. And I'll read those activities to you now. These are the 4 areas of action the intervention is engaged in order to further their agenda of gaining access to the world and its people. The first activity is influencing individuals in positions of political and commercial power. So the intervention recognizes that they need to gain access to the halls of power and authority in our world whenever and wherever possible. And being that we are a world of many, many hundreds of countries with separate economies and governance structures, that presents quite a challenge, I'm sure, but also an opportunity for them to work with different individuals and groups in different ways, and unfortunately generate conflict and division as a result. So the intervention is engaged in reaching out to individuals in positions of power, promising them wealth, preeminence in the world, technology that others don't have, free technology, things that can be used to amplify the power of that group or that government. So that's the first area of activity for the intervention. The second is creating hidden establishments in the world from which they can project influence upon large population centers, essentially influencing the thinking and the emotions of millions of people at a time in subtle ways, shifting humanity into a more weakened, depleted, conflicted state basically a state that renders us open to intervention, even wanting intervention. And the Allies of Humanity call this program underway the pacification program. It is a concerted attempt to pacify the native peoples, to bring our sense of reality down, to actually disperse our sense of reality, to actually put in question our sense of reality, to amplify and encourage certain thoughts and emotions that are negative, hostile, weak, and giving over of our authority. And so it is from these hidden establishments that they are able, through technological means, to project that influence in what the Allies call the mental environment. And now the mental environment, new idea. And there are so many new realities presented in the Allies briefings and in the New Message from God that it begs going to it, reading it, seeing what's there, and learning, because this is an education. This really is a new reality of awareness and education that's come through Marshall. And it's too much to say in a few minutes. And one element of that new reality is what the New Message and the Allies call the mental environment, which is the parallel reality to the physical. It's an environment where thoughts are generated, extend themselves in unpredictable ways, and influence other thoughts, the thoughts of other thinking, sentient life. And now in our world, we have forms of intelligent life with vastly different brains and ways of thinking, and much more powerful ways of thinking, where they can, in a very concentrated manner, generate thoughts that influence others. And of course, as humans, we're somewhat weak. We're somewhat impressionable and influenceable even by each other. And none of us are really developed in the mental environment. And so, unfortunately, that renders us vulnerable to this pacification program, which is occurring in this mental environment. So that's the second area of activity, is hidden establishments and the creation of a pacification program. The third area is manipulating our spiritual and religious beliefs. Now, this is a whole world we could talk for hours on. Humanity is a people quite rich in spiritual traditions, diverse views, and a quite remarkable aptitude for devotion towards the divine, an unseen force, or devotion to other forms of unseen power, spirits, ancestors, and so forth. We have many, many religious traditions. The Allies say this is an asset. This is actually a huge gift that we have to offer the greater community. Because the greater community, being a challenging physical environment, has led many worlds to become highly technological, highly secular, to have very strict top-down structures of authority, and by and large, to lose their native spirituality and religious traditions if they ever had them. It is not the spiritual universe that we want. It is not a universe where, the next door neighbor is enlightened and so is his neighbor. And there's a few bad ones, but mostly good, or maybe half good. That's actually not the picture that the Allies of Humanity present. It's much more akin to the world we see today, just on a vast scale and at a level of technological achievement beyond what we can believe. But it is a universe, not a world, it is a universe of competing powers. It is a universe of territory. It is a universe of interaction and influence for trade and for other reasons. And as technology has amplified amongst races and been copied and developed, basically influence and the ability to exert your will upon others has transitioned in some ways out of technology and into the mental environment, into the power of group mind, focusing itself to generate an influence over another race in this case. So it is a universe of many challenges, many physical realities, many natural laws that we can observe here in our world hold true there too. It's a universe of competition. It is a universe, however, with a spiritual direction. And this is really what the New Message from God presents, which is the spiritual direction that the universe, however slowly, is moving, inching in the direction of. And the importance of our world as a world rich in spiritual traditions, the memory of people who have transcended a human awareness only and have achieved some degree of spiritual advancement, that our world actually has a gift to offer, a gift to contribute to this greater community of life. And yet at the same time, though we have this gift, it can be used against us. And this really is the third activity of the intervention, which is influencing our religious beliefs, our symbols, in ways that benefit the intervention. And in this sense, we have many, many open doors, many back doors into our own minds, unfortunately, where we believe in the coming of a savior or a messiah or an imam. We are opening ourselves to what we believe are angels or mediums or ascended masters and so forth, opening ourselves in essence to unseen forces. And in the mental environment, unseen forces can be generated, can be created and directed. And that is what is happening. Our religious beliefs are being turned to face the ET presence. We're being turned to think that they are the enlightened saviors of this race, that they created humanity in the ancient past, that they created our religions, that our great prophets and messengers may have even been extraterrestrial in origin. Turning our prostration, our belief and our faith towards an off-planet physical presence that is in our world. And there are so many innumerable ways that this can be done and is being done. And it's quite concerning and very dangerous, unfortunately. And in addition, people are very sensitive to visions of saints, of saviors, to religious experience. Religious experience, spiritual awareness are these gifts that we carry. And yet the intervention has the power to project an image into our awareness, to cause us to see a saint or a prophet or a messenger in our own mind's eye. And this is happening around the world. So this is the third area of activity of the intervention. And then lastly, and perhaps most disturbing, is a hybridization program to integrate the awareness and the intent of the extraterrestrial presence into humanity at a physical, genetic level in order to create a being or class of beings who is fully human, looks, walks, talks just like you and I, but is fundamentally aligned to the intervention and receptive to it and possesses some of its remarkable abilities as well. And the goal here is to create a leadership for our world. So a leadership that looks human and by all accounts can't be anything but human, but in truth is fundamentally not human. And this is accounted for tremendously in the literature and in the research of many individuals. David Jacobs comes to mind, who's done a lifetime of research into the phenomenon of abductions and really the goal and outcome of the abduction phenomenon, which has become clear as day to any who can see it clearly. So this is the picture. These are the four activities of the intervention. This is the local universe into which we are emerging. This is our position in our evolution as an emerging world. And the allies of humanity present what really is a compelling call for us, the natives, not to submit to any ET power, not to receive technology from any ET power, but to see the situation clearly, to take ownership of our position as the native peoples of this world, and to do what we must now do to secure our freedom, to repel the intervention, and to prepare for our emergence into this universe of life at many different levels: physical, mental, spiritual, social, political, economic. The preparation is huge. And Marshall really has been teaching this preparation for many years now. The New Message from God presents it very clearly. And there's a community of people actually around the world who are gathering night and day, undertaking that preparation. And if you go to the New Message website, there's a link to the community of the New Message, which is a community of hundreds, maybe thousands of people around the world who are undertaking the preparation that the allies of humanity call for, and that has been given through Marshall, through the New Message from God. So that's a brief picture on the allies' briefings. And what we might walk away with it from is a clear sense that we have hit the tipping point. We have crossed the line in our evolution. There's no going back. We've been an isolated world for how many millennia? or longer. And now we are stepping out into an advanced playing field of different forces and influences with different intents. And we must A, be a part of it, and not just queue out and be a human and live our lives distracted and, oblivious to this larger evolutionary track we're taking. But even as we participate and become aware, we have to educate and prepare ourselves in the reality, not the preferred reality, not the reality we might want or make, but the reality that is. And for that, we need a reality-based preparation. And that is fundamentally what the Allies of Humanity are calling for. They're calling for enough people to become forerunners for the human race, to prepare in a greater community education and awareness, and then contribute that to the world in ways that are unique to them, unique to our own gifts and purpose for being in the world at this time. And the preparation that the Allies speak of and that the new message provides is called Steps to Knowledge. Steps to Knowledge is a book of 365 daily steps, and it is a journey into contact with the deeper spiritual mind within each of us. And it is a preparation for the thinking mind, the surface mind, and the deeper mind to unite in this life in a way that supports humanity's emergence into the greater community. So Steps to Knowledge, a remarkable book. I started it when I was 16, briefly. I think I got maybe 40 or 50 steps in, and then, wasn't quite ready for the rest. But I've since done it many times, and there are thousands of people around the world studying it daily. And it's bringing a tremendous sense of perspective about their own personal affairs and the state of the world, and a real salt of the earth preparation to actually take you and me somewhere we haven't been before. Not a bunch of fancy terms or names and dates and, research into the UFO phenomenon. Instead, it's a preparation that we can take day by day that actually begins to change the look and the feel of life and begins to orient you to participating in the world with a greater community awareness, an acknowledgement of life out there, an acknowledgement that you, as an individual, may have had a past lineage out there, and that your sense of divinity, your sense of spirituality is not just human, it's connected. It's connected to that vast web of life, and that there are experiences and memories and a deeper orientation that comes alive when you begin to think of yourself as a human with a greater community awareness. You become a Muslim with a greater community awareness, a Christian with a greater community awareness. And this begins to heal many ills and address many unsolved questions about life. And also let go. It allows you to let go of some things that you've been attached to maybe all your life, and really embrace a completely new kind of picture about what we are as human beings, what we're a part of, and where we're going, and our connection to the great coordination that's underway in our world at this time. Coordination on behalf of the angelic presence to prepare this world to safely, wisely emerge into the greater community. So all of this begins to come alive with Steps to Knowledge. And I recommend everybody at least go download the PDF that's free online and read the introduction and look at these steps. These are remarkable steps. This book was given through my father in a matter of days, nonstop. He spoke it, it was recorded, and what you read is what was recorded. I can't imagine any individual writing a book of that quality. And I urge you to go look at it and discern its quality for yourself. And if you feel that contact and the reality of life beyond the world has always called to you, and that there is an innate sense of heritage, of history there, and a sense of consequence about your life, that you're here in the world when we're emerging, at the time of our emergence, if you feel that, then begin steps. Step number 1. You can begin it at any time. And it begins a journey of unfolding the layers, the layers of what the world has conditioned in you, but also the layers of deeper experience and connection and awareness that you brought into the world. Those are also there. And so steps to knowledge, an amazing journey to take, and many people taking it in the world. And that's so important, because enough people have to be oriented as, as rational thinking people to the reality of life, to the reality of contact, to the reality of the intervention. And all that says about the importance of human unity, of the unity of religions and their common source, of the preciousness of our environment, of the need to make personal compromises for a greater good as the world faces a world of slowly shrinking resources, as it faces a climate that's been altered and so forth, that individuals, enough people, make that compromise for a greater good. All of that comes through the steps to knowledge. So that really is the preparation and the way forward. And as we step back and kind of look at it in total, what do we have? Okay, what do we have? We have a phenomenon of contact with other forms of intelligent life underway for over 50 years' time. We have governments being contacted. We have individuals being taken. We have a variety of activities underway that are likely not signs of good intent by those visiting us. We have a plethora of messages from ET sources claiming enlightenment, claiming to be here to save us or bring us into a new golden age, tapping into all of our religious ideas and symbols, ascension, the Aquarian age, Jesus, everything can be tapped into and is. We have that going on. And we have a growing number of people around the world waking up to the fact that the greatest event in human history is happening. Contact is occurring. Our isolation is over. And yet, as they enter that world of information and perspective, it's not clear what's happening and why. And so we have people researching that forever and ever, asking the first two questions: what is happening? Why is it happening? Never really getting to the second two questions. What does it mean? And what must we do? They're really important questions. And the Allies of Humanity briefings, in my experience, provide a good deal of what we need to know about what is happening and why. It's right there. It's as clear as day. We are the native peoples of this world. Just like the native peoples of the North American continent, South American continent, throughout the historical record on Earth, the native peoples sitting on top of valuable land, resources controlled by others, who see tall ships coming over the sea, over the horizon of the known world, and are faced all of a sudden, forced to face, who are these individuals? Why are they here? What does it mean? What must we do? And that is currently the position of humanity. And we may project onto the visitors all of our hopes and desires, our desire for something fresh and new, our hope to be a part of something more spiritually important in the world than just working a job and living a life. And yet it's time now to get sober and clear and reality-based regarding what contact really is. We are the native peoples, and this is an intervention. These are forces coming to our shores with their own intentions. And if we don't discern those intentions, if we demand disclosure from one another but not from them, then we are making ourselves wide open and vulnerable to all manner of influence and manipulation. And so I really do compel people to stop and think and really assess this from kind of ground up. Before we leap to conclusions of who the visitors might be or how great they might be or where they come from, what their names are, let's look at the situation. We are a world of 7 billion individuals, a world that is divided in conflict daily, a world whose environment is being destroyed every year. And yet this world is a biological gem. It's a gem in the universe of barren worlds. And here we're being visited. And the activities of the visitors are not beneficial. These are not good activities. Abducting people against their will, placing technology or some sort of transmission device in their body, mutilating animals, causing harm to personal life and property, engaging the military in ways that are very dangerous. These are not disclosed intents. These are surreptitious activities that all signal intervention all across the board. And yet that most people have leapt to the conclusion that these are enlightened visitors who are here to rescue us in some way, or unite the world, or that they own us, or that they authored us. These are understandable first thoughts and impulses, but we need to mature out of them. It's time now, as a race, to realize we're the native peoples. We need to unite for the preservation and the protection of Earth. And that, in a nutshell, is really the Allies of Humanity briefings. I encourage everyone to go read the briefings, because there's only so much I can do in 45 minutes to present them. There are 3 sets of briefings. They're all free online. And after reading the briefings, go look at Steps to Knowledge. Go look at some of the videos and interviews of Marshall, my father, Marshall Leon Summers, and get the full picture on what we're really facing with contact. And see if this speaks to you at a deeper level, because the message of the Allies may not be what we want. I think I can probably say it's not what we want. You know, what we want is something brighter and more full of hope and love and new panoramas and, you know, fascinating contact experiences. That's what we want. That's okay, you know. But reality is reality. We're facing a real phenomenon. This is nature playing out. And we have to go beyond what we want. And in fact, we need to not want things from the visitors, because when you want something from someone, it compromises your discernment. Now, all of a sudden, you have a vested interest in an outcome. We need to step back from that, I feel, and really gain an objective assessment of contact that has occurred heretofore. See ourselves as the native peoples, which we clearly are. See the value of this planet, which is clear as day, and really take the steps individually, not waiting on government, not waiting on elite groups and the deep state to reveal the secrets that they know. That is empowering the very forces that may or may not be working with the intervention. We are the people who need to be empowered. And that is precisely what the Allies briefings are. The Allies briefings are disclosure. They are the disclosure that we need. They disclose the intent of those visiting our world, and they disclose what we need to do collectively and individually about it. That's the disclosure we need. Waiting on government for another 5, 10, 20, 30 years to reveal documents and juicy details and names and dates and meetings. This is not actually, whether it happens or not, whether it's authentic or not, going to actually tell us what it means and what we need to do. And that's why I feel the Allies briefings are the place to start as you explore contact. And they may be, maybe, for some, the place to end as well, where once you know, you know. You know, take the Native American tribes of North America 200, 300 years ago. Here they were facing visitors to their shores, Europeans from different countries with strange garbs, strange technology. Some of the tribes welcomed these visitors, some repelled them. There was dissension between the tribes regarding how to react to this, how to take advantage of it. And I'm sure to them at that time, it looked wonderfully interesting, complex. You know, are these spirits? Are these our ancestors? Are these powerful emissaries from another world? Who are they? You know, and I'm sure there was much debate about who the visitors were and what to do and whether to welcome them or how to cooperate, trade with them. But the now, in perfect hindsight, we know that the picture was abundantly simple. These were forces intervening in the native world of North America, there to take advantage of the people and the resources and to take what they had. That is, in essence, the simple truth, and it really is simple. Contact is complex in all the facets of its phenomena, but in essence, it is not as complex as we think. So, and with that, I think that kind of reveals in some ways what is standing in the way. It's not the government. It's not the deep state. It's actually us in some ways. Because in all honesty, I don't know if we want the mystery to end. I don't know if we want to see the picture clearly. Because to see the picture clearly means you have to do something about it. You have to take a stand. You have to commit some amount of your life or your resources or your energy to responding to it. You know, to see the picture clearly means you can move on from the question of what is it to the question of what must I do. And none of us, you know, likes to change a whole lot. You know, change is not easy, especially change on this order. This is about the biggest change you could ask a human to make. This is transcending our tribal, religious, national identities to some level. This is embracing our enemies among the human family to some level. This is making sacrifices personally. This is not having the life of grand fulfillment and creativity and expression we thought we should. In fact, it's something else. It's a life of purposeful contribution to our world, acceptance of our world, going back in, re-upping our commitment to humanity, our faith in human leadership. You know, many people have given up on humanity and human leadership. That's actually one of the core messages of the intervention. Basically, when the intervener comes, they have to displace the native people's sense of reality and commitment to one another. So they undermine our sense of commitment to our leaders. They undermine our sense of commitment to our spiritual traditions and our cultures. They degrade those. They say they're lesser, they're fear-based. What we bring is love-based. They disturb our sense of reality. You know, they teach that all sorts of things. They teach that humanity was authored by an alien power, or that the earth is flat, or who knows, disturbing our sense of reality. This happened throughout the history of humanity when advanced powers interacted with weaker, less advanced powers and took advantage of them. This same story of intervention took place. And though the universe is not necessarily a replica of what's happened here, in no way, the truth is we do have a world of 7 billion sentient life forms that has a history, a historical record that we can analyze. And that is called humanity. And so I do feel we need to start there, start at the ground level, which is nature, science, history, human experience, and not leap to some belief system that embraces, you know, enlightened, multidimensional beings with no questioning of them. So this is kind of the important next step that sits before us, those who are aware of the phenomenon of contact. We have to be courageous enough to go beyond the first question of what is happening and step into and really transition out of it. You know, how much more research do we really need? How much disclosure do we really need to know that there's an intervention and that we actually have the power, as the allies say, to thwart it without too much effort? It's actually quite vulnerable in its position. We have the power to do this. But we, who are aware of it, have to acknowledge that it's real and that this has to do with us and that we're willing to play our part. So, you know, this is the essence of the situation. It's a calling to people around the world who have this sense of connection to this time, to this step, this leap out into the universe in which we live, who have this sense of connection to contact, who have a sense of history or memory about life beyond this world. These people, the new message calls greater community people. They're people who were born into this time to serve the world at this point in its evolution. And they come bearing gifts, they come bearing a greater awareness. And there are millions of these people in the world. And I would make a fair guess that there are a good many watching right now, listening to this right now, who have this sense of a greater community connection, who haven't, no matter what they've done and tried, been able to satisfy themselves with purely human aspirations and goals and successes. It's just not enough. It doesn't reach deep enough in them. There's another part of them that is not activated and awoken and given the ability to communicate in the world by all that they see in society and culture. There's something deeper, and it has to do with contact. And those people are with us, they're watching, they're in the world, there are millions of them. And they are the ones who will take this race of humanity forward into the greater community. But they need to know that their sense of connection is with the greater community. It's not necessarily with those visiting our world at this time. So we have to step back and acknowledge we have there is a spiritual awakening occurring within us because of the greater community. But those races interacting with us now, these are of a different order. Our relationship is not with them. It's with what's out there. It's with where we're going. But we have to get to where we're going. We have to go through the thresholds of early contact. We have to face intervention, which is, it's what it is. It's a quiet integration into our world, or the attempt at that. And get beyond that and realize that we have gifts to offer humanity, that we are connected to the allies of humanity who have given these briefings. This group of individuals, the allies, were sent to our world to represent freedom in the greater community and to show us what freedom looks like and how it can be achieved. They were sent to the vicinity of our world to give these briefings, and then they departed. Their briefings have been given. They're no longer in this world. Well, they were never in this world. They came within the vicinity of the world. And, you know, to go beyond intervention and realize we're a part of that too. We're a part of this network of spiritual advancement and the cultivation of freedom, the awareness of what the new message calls knowledge, spiritual awareness. This is happening throughout the universe. This is what we're connected to in truth. But we can't just open the front door of the house and think that, you know, the guy in the suit with the briefcase is the one that represents it. You know, that might just be a salesman actually, or that might be someone there to rob your house. And in fact, our house is being somewhat robbed. You know, visitation is happening without our consent or approval, without our awareness. You know, this is an invasion of sorts into our private space. And yet our future does lie out there in the larger panorama of life. So as we become aware of the intervention, take the steps to knowledge, help others become aware and take those steps, we become the forerunners for really a new expression of humanity, a new chapter where we're not just human anymore. We're connected. We're a part of the web of life, not just the animals and plants in our world now, but all life. You know, and that's a very exciting thing for people to become a part of, I think, and to do it in a very grounded way, in a way that's really real. It's not idealism. Someone didn't think all this up and just hopes and wishes that this is true and that's true. No, this is a revelation. This is a revelation from the divine, given to enable us to emerge into the universe in which we live in a safe, clear, and powerful way. And I hope that those with us feel that calling to prepare. And if they do, the resources are here, the Allies briefings are here, and the new message revelation is here as well. So I'll stop there, Alfred.
Yeah, thank you. It's a very deep, substantive, broad, and concise summary. Thank you. It really opened a lot of avenues for me personally.
Good.
Very good summary, and I'm sure for our viewers as well. And I was wondering, just before we transition to the next part of the program, would it be possible to share one of the steps so that we understand what a step looks like or sounds like or is?
That would be wonderful. Do you have one in mind, or I can pull up steps?
I don't know. I mean, you'll have to tell me. I don't know what any of the steps are.
Great. Let me, I have it right here in front of me. There's some remarkable steps on the greater community in particular. In my mind, some of these steps are just simply famous because they present what I think the listener would find very hard to find anywhere else in the world.
Mhm.
which is a universal spirituality, non-judgmental, non-dogmatic, that really transcends the religions of today and yet connects to them, and takes us out into the greater community and back again. And that's what STEPS is doing. So let me read a step here. Here we go. Let's see here. I'll do 187, which is, I am a citizen of the greater community of worlds. So it reads, I am a citizen of the greater community of worlds. You are not merely a human being in this one world. You are a citizen of the greater community of worlds. This is the physical universe that you recognize through your senses. It is far greater than you can now comprehend. The extent of its relationships are far greater than you can even imagine, for reality is always greater than imagination. You are a citizen of a greater physical universe. This acknowledges not only your lineage and your heritage, but also your purpose in life at this time. For the world of humanity is growing into the life of the greater community of worlds. This is known to you, though your beliefs may not yet account for it. Today, upon the hour, affirm your citizenship in the greater community of worlds. For this affirms a greater life that you are now beginning to discover. In your 2 meditation practices, once again enter stillness and quietude. This growing experience of stillness will enable you to understand all things. For your mind was created to assimilate knowledge, and this is how understanding comes about. The accumulation of ideas and the accumulation of theories do not constitute either knowledge or understanding, for understanding is born of true affinity and experience. In this, it has no parallel in the world, and can thus serve the world that you perceive. So that is step 187. I am a citizen of the greater community of worlds.
Worlds. That's a very beautiful affirmation, or if that's a word for it, or insight, community of worlds.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. So then one is the practice then to take one step a day, or to work with step over time, or to work through a step until you're ready to go to a next step? How's it?
Yeah, good question. Yeah. Well, it is a step a day, although it's not strict and rigid. I myself I spend days with certain steps because they're so deep,
Yeah.
you know. And this step 187 is in a whole series of steps. I'll just read a few more that follow it. You can get a sense for kind of where the journey of steps leads from then on. Let's see here. So after I am a citizen of the greater community of worlds, it goes on. Step 188. My life in this world is more important than I had realized before. Step 189. My spiritual family exists in all places. Step 190. The world is emerging into the greater community of worlds, and that is why I have come. Step 191. My knowledge is greater than my humanity. Step
My
192.
knowledge is, sorry, I didn't get, my knowledge is greater than my humanity?
Yes.
Wow.
I think it would be good to talk about knowledge, because steps to knowledge, what is knowledge? Knowledge is not what we would define knowledge to be in any dictionary. In the new message, knowledge is the innate ability of all sentient life to know at a deep and intrinsic level. It is the capacity for remarkable insight. It is the connection point that bonds us to those who we have been in relationship with, even in past lives or past settings. In fact, knowledge in the new message is really our true self beyond physical life, certainly this one life. it is the part of us that is still fully bonded to what you might call God or consciousness in the universe. There is a state of permanent relationship and connection beyond the physical universe from which we separated. And that separation caused the physical universe to come into existence, to go bang and produce galaxies and clusters of galaxies and, innumerable worlds. But the new message says there are 100 billion intelligent races in the universe. That's how big it is. And that the separation was the separation from God that caused the physical universe to come into form, so that those who wanted to be separate could enter form and express their separation. And knowledge in all of us, you and me, all of us, we are those in this physical, corporeal body and life. Knowledge is the part of us that remained, because we can never fully separate. And so within us, we have this deeper mind. And yet we also have a surface mind, the mind that thinks. But that is not who we are. We are not our mind or our body. We are soul journeying through separation with a firm and permanent point of connection back to our origin. And so steps to knowledge is bringing the thinking mind, personality, emotion, so forth, into connection, even into marriage, ultimately, with the knowing mind. And as it is discussed in the new message, this produces a powerful ability to move others at a deep level, and not at the level of thought, at a deeper level. And so when we talk about knowledge, it is this deeper mind and this ability to have profound insight, to experience profound relationship. And also, it is the one part of us that really cannot be manipulated. And I think manipulation is an important reality to face in the world at this time at many levels, but certainly at the level of the intervention. They are actively involved in affecting our thought, affecting our emotions, ultimately guiding our actions. And knowledge, this mind within us, is the part of us that cannot be touched by anything in physical life. It is not in physical life. And this mind has a will. It carries a direction for us individually, purpose for this life that we're meant to fulfill, and so much more. And so steps to knowledge is really coming back into contact with that part of you. And from there, so much becomes clear that was confusing before. Even the reality of contact becomes clear when it was confusing before. So that's what knowledge is in the new message.
That is really interesting. So it seems this is just, and I look forward to getting my own copy and to embarking on this. I mean, it's the beginning of 2018. It's the perfect time to start, isn't it? I mean, the beginning of a new year. And it seems to me from an exopolitical point of view, looking at that science is positive, that one strategy behind this may be to really reinforce those spiritual circuits among the souls here on earth and among the, as you said, enlightened contiguous worlds, so that all those circuits are, and that's a collective defense against an intervention of a spiritually not as evolved intervention force. I'm just kind of making...
So true. No, you're tapping into the answer, in my view. This is the answer. It's the allies of humanity. They are students of knowledge as well.
Yeah.
They are students of a universal form of spiritual practice that doesn't have saints and histories and end days and Armageddons and all that. It is fun. It is essential. It is essentially bringing the mind that thinks, that is separated from life, back into contact with the mind that knows, for its own protection, but also so the mind that knows can express itself in this world of separation. They're students of that too, and there are many students of that throughout the universe. And of course, their approach takes different forms. It's not all 100% identical, but the core of it is essentially the same thing. And the intervention is advanced in the sense of technology, and yet not in the sense of spirituality. And people make this mistake all the time, thinking that the technologically advanced must have transcended war, resolved their differences, found equitable ways of dealing with each other, and thus are enlightened, or are certainly more enlightened than us. But that is not, well, what our experience here on Earth says about technology. Technology does not lead to any form of spiritual advancement. In fact, it can become a replacement religion, the religion of technology. The belief that power to affect physical life, geology, is God. We can be God through technology. That is prevalent in our world today, and there are many people who believe technology to be their savior, in effect, even if they are religious or aren't religious. And the intervention knows exactly how to engage with that belief system, because that is their belief system. They do not recognize the power of spirit, or they wouldn't be doing what they're doing. They wouldn't be intervening in a world, taking people against their will, doing very violent and destructive things to those individuals, colluding with governments, pitting governments against each other. This is not the activity of enlightened anyone or anything. These are the prosaic acts of an intervention with prosaic needs. So when you say that, lighting up the circuitry, I love that image. I've thought that myself. Like, knowledge is like circuitry. It's like dormant computing power, and it like of a level way beyond the mind. And we know what this is. Cultures around the world know what knowledge is. We call it by many names. We call it gnosis. We call it gut intuition. People just talk about it. I had a feeling that, or I had a premonition that. We all know what this feeling of being moved inexplicably is like. We've had moments. And think if that experience went from being a moment or two in the life of a person to being the life of a person, to being something that really is the ordering principle of a life. To be moved at that level, immensely powerful. Knowledge, as the allies describe it, it is your one great hope. You will not advance technologically enough to compete with those who are in our world today, to take advantage of our world. We will not develop power in the mental environment sufficient to really, counteract fully the level of influence cast on our world. But we are a spiritual people with deep history of spiritual and religious experience that transcends our humanity. So that step, my knowledge is greater than my humanity, is to say that what you brought into the world, this part of you that is connected to all life, and even to what exists beyond physical life, is greater than this part of us. This 6 inches of gray matter, 9 inches of gray matter, whatever it is, that has been conditioned by a culture, a family, maybe a religion. And here it is, largely afraid, hopeful, distracted, not terribly connected to life, not terribly intelligent in its decision making, not very wise. That's us. Let's be honest. We are individually and collectively not that far down the road of where we could go. And yet what we have is this tremendous sense of reverence towards God, spirit, whatever you call it, it's a reverence. Nature, some people find that reverence in nature. I don't think that's much different. I don't find nature to be much different than a chapel. Basically, it's a place where you can re-experience the power of spirit again, and that's what religion is. Religion is a structure to enable people to re-experience this divinity that we carry. And this divinity that we carry, the allies say, this is our greatest hope, because it will discern and reveal the intervention clearly. It will empower us to take care of our world, to not rely on an extraterrestrial savior to do so, And ultimately, it's what we have to give. It's our greatest gift to the universe in which we live, because out there, it's a universe of barren worlds, technological, hierarchical societies. It's not a universe of monks and priests and saints and mystics. It's a challenging place out there, and to have a rich spirituality to offer, that's quite extraordinary. And the Allies of Humanity call that out. You know, they say you are endowed with these gifts. Much has been given to your world from the angelic presence over time to cultivate this. And despite all of our problems and dilemmas, we still have it.
Now, let me ask you this, to see how you view this, because it's sort of a great, and that is that it appears, at least through my research and studies, that the existing organized religions, the major Abrahamic religions, let's look at the major churches in Christianity, Judaism, and Islam.
Mm-hmm.
Look at them from an intervention point of view. They seem to have been infiltrated, at least hypothetically. I would bring this point out. They seem to have been infiltrated by the intervention. If you look at the Vatican, for example, and this is factual research that we've done, the College of Cardinals and the popes, eyewitnesses that they're involved in ritual child sacrifice and pedophilia, actual research that the chapels, the new chapel in the Vatican is designed like the inside of a snake, of a serpent. You can go online and see that, i.e., it's a very negative reptilian place. So that kind of is more along the Draco side, you know, the Draco reptilians in terms of their intervention. If you look at Islam, I'm just bringing kind of the dirty laundry of exopolitics and saying, hey, here's some evidence that supports your thesis. If you go to Islam, to Mecca, where a lot of the pilgrim, you know, there's annual pilgrimages, and without getting to the excesses that the current Saudi regime has carried out, massacres against the pilgrims. But anyway, that's a different story. There's research that suggests that the stone and the meteor in there is actually a meteor of negative sentient black goo or artificial intelligence. It's a negative extraterrestrial weapon that has in there primarily to stir up Islam as a negative force. If you go to the Judaism, the Sanhedrin, there's evidence now. We just ran a webinar on it, whereby there was a leak from the Dead Sea Scrolls that are now kept not only under armed guard, but if you attempt to get in there, they're guarded by the Mossad by poisonous gas. That Jesus, the historical Jesus, was actually may have been executed by the Sanhedrin, which is the secret Jewish government which goes back to
Yeah.
Babylon and back to Samaria, as an extraterrestrial disclosure activist. In other words, you can look at the Allies of Humanity as extraterrestrial disclosure activists. So Jesus was coming in and saying and he uses the word worlds in that part of the Dead Sea Scrolls, which were leaked to Dr. Frank Strange's, who then released them under death threat from these right-wing parties in Israel who are keeping them secret, who are allied with the Sanhedrin.
Yeah.
In other words, that both Judaism and the Vatican and Islam are deeply allied with the intervention. I'm just kind of agreeing with you and bringing the evidence of that. So,
yeah, I mean, this reality of manipulating religious beliefs and institutions, it's very concerning because we have very little awareness of our own belief structures and how those will be rendered challenged or even obsolete facing life in the universe. We're very unprepared psychologically, spiritually. It's important, I think, to keep in mind, what is the intervention trying to do here? Why would they manipulate the beliefs and inclinations of people? Well, to create a belief that an extraterrestrial power is God or Jesus or whatever they worship, basically, to replace the divine, the mystery, the presence that we are connected to, with an extraterrestrial presence. This is precisely what happened in history when the native peoples of the New World looked over the line of the known world, that line of the ocean, and thought that over there was the spirit realm. Okay, and that anything that would come would represent that. And here they come with strange headgear and strange dress and different skin tone, and they made the mistake of projecting their beliefs onto the visitors. And the visitors recognized this happening and took full advantage of it. Sure, why not? And I think that's important to keep in mind, that the intervention, I don't know all the details of who's been contacted and influenced and how that's playing out, but the end goal is associating the visitors as a spiritual force. The end goal is generating conflict, fixating us on each other as enemies. And religion opens the door for that. Inflaming ancient animosities. Certain regions of the world are holy to multiple religions. Well, there's a lot of opportunity for that. And the goal there is to pull the stronger nations, primarily the United States and certain European countries, into intractable conflict. And so, if, say, the intervention were to project the image of a saint or of the Prophet Muhammad into the minds of a follower of Islam, and that presence or that image were to command them to do certain things, amazing. I mean, imagine a follower not being able to respond to that. That's pretty compelling, right? I mean, the follower of Jesus would do the same. The follower of Buddha would do the same, and we are totally ill-equipped to discern, what's happening in the mental environment. But people can be guided through religion. People can be moved, shifted, either through institutions, through the pacification program, or through direct intrusion into the minds of people. People can be moved. And that's really it. The intervention wants to direct the actions of humanity in some way. And religion, unfortunately, is one of the biggest unlocked and wide open doors in the world to do so. And of course, there's a lot of power in these religious institutions. A few people can direct the thinking and the actions of a lot of people. So getting this message, the Allies' message, to these religious leaders is critical, I feel, because our reverence toward the unseen powers could be our downfall, because the intervention can represent an unseen power. They are already generating numerous messages, channeled or revealed, or however they come through, painting the visitors as spiritual saviors, undermining our faith and leadership, saying that they are the only way that we can heal the world and bring peace to humanity. These kinds of messages, these are all red flags, regarding intervention. They all take the power away from us. They may look like they give us the power. Personally, they take it away from us. And they put it in the hands of an external force. So I think, I'm not really equipped to speculate as to who's being influenced and how in these different traditions, but they're all vulnerable. And the intervention will use anything. I think that's important to keep in mind. Like, instead of, we could go down every rabbit hole, and trace every possible thing they're doing, they'll use anything. It doesn't matter. Maybe another religion offers a better opportunity, and so what really needs to happen is education at a broad level. And that's really, what Marshall is doing in the world. That's what the new message is here to do, is to broadly educate people about this reality.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Now we can go to kind of the case study part of our program.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that you agreed to come into this. And what it is, as you know, is that on October 28th of 2017, we published a case study of an apparent interdimensional craft that appeared in Spain, near Valencia, Spain, which to a contactee there, which apparently transmitted a message to humanity in Morse code. And there was we have a lot of tangible evidence with it. There are videos, there's audio, there's a 42-second segment of video. There's about 2 hours, there's a 42 segment rather, Morse code segment from a craft that's in front of a portal that opened up at the top of the mountain. And according to the contactee named Hermes, the craft, but it looks like it may have come out of that portal, actually transmitted the Morse code onto his camera. So his camera and his film picked up the Morse code signal, first 42 seconds and then several hours worth. And it looked like they were mathematical formulas. And what I think I can do now is begin to go into share screen. Would that be okay?
Sure. Yep.
Yeah. Let me just bring in this other screen, this other material here. And we can just, you and I are going to go off to the side of this. So here we are. I'll press that, and then we'll just put share screen. And so we'll be looking at various things, but the first thing here is this is just background for people. And this is one of the photos. This is a frame from a video, and this is sort of a golden shaped egg, which is like a craft that accompanied a lot of video. And there's the contactee Hermes, and he's supported by a Cuban ET abductee, Maria, and there were these apparent messages in Morse code sent from an interdimensional ET craft. It could be either from the craft or from the portal behind him, maneuvering over Hermes in the mountains near Valencia, Spain on September 10th, 2017. Hermes captured the ET craft on video and audio sightings, which are shared in depth during the webinar. And we've sent you and your offices all of the links for this. And
Yep, I did read the text that you sent. Yep.
Oh, great, good. And the ETs would seek him out and signal him when and where they were, and he would go out to the mountain and he would videotape them. And when we started the webinar, the ETs appeared over his house in Spain at night. During the webinar, Maria, who's also an ET contactee, she wasn't decoding the message in the 42 seconds so much as decoding Morse, but rather what she felt psychically were her impressions. We are here now, we have returned to help you. That is kind of that message, okay? And so one Morse code message from the ET craft is 42 seconds in length. Another recording, according to Hermes, contains several hours of messages in Morse code. And during the webinar, it emerged that Hermes had been attempting to enroll expert organizational assistants, but was not able to. He went to NASA in Spain, the NASA astrobiologist, who refused even to pick up the telephone when his secretary put him through, and to other people such as Dr. Stephen Greer. And so he came to me and we said, well, we'll put you on the air and let's see what we find. So we sat back, and there's a great deal of data that we've gone through, and we went through various hypotheses, benevolent hypotheses, as to who these could be. One is that, these could be the members of the Regional Galactic Governance Council, including the Alpha Centaurians, the Pleiadians, and the Sirians, who are mentioned in the standard exopolitical literature as the kind of the positive upper dimensional human extraterrestrials who are spiritual and who kind of overlook our affairs. They may be among the greater community of worlds. I mean, planets in those areas. I don't know. I'm just kind of tossing it out. Or they could be, and a lifelong Canadian NORAD officer, Stanley Fulham, established communication with them. He wrote a book, said they would decloak their spaceships over New York City and the United Nations, which they did on October 13th, 2010. So that all looked very positive because they said, well, we want to land at the United Nations, we want to speak there, and then we want to clean up the environment of the Earth, which is really, it's full of polluted with ionizing radiation because of nuclear bombing testing, the weapons, Fukushima and all. But that's their story, okay? And so that was one kind of hy hypothesis that went there. And then the last time that I spoke to Hermes, he was very agitated, and he came up, he says, look, I really don't trust these people anymore. I don't like the way that they're treating me.
These people, Alfred?
Well, we don't know. He had photos of the humanoids that were coming off of the craft, and they were very tall, and they looked very weird. I mean, assuming that this was not some kind of government disinformation ploy, okay, and in the 2-hour webinar, we go through and we show some photos of the humanoids, and they look like 7-foot kind of monsters. You know what I'm saying? And he had become very disillusioned with them. So there's a now, and I'm going to show some short video clips and things now, but
Alfred, has this message that Hermes received, has it been decoded? We have not gotten, we have not reached a stable organization that has undertaken to want to, where we've had a stable connection that has the expertise that wants to deal with this material. At the point where I thought that was going to occur, both the connection with the organization collapsed for certain reasons, which I won't go into, that's a whole story in itself, but also Hermes himself became very concerned that that the aliens were not on the up and up, and that he was being manipulated. And on the night that I went to contact him, after we went, he and I had a whole exercise where we put together the data that we were going to turn over to an organization who was going to examine it. He and his wife had a discussion. She kind of laid down the law to him and said, look, this is not working out for our family, and you better get back to your day job and, start doing all this stuff, Now, what's very interesting, and I can say that because he's out there, is we had not announced our program with you until shortly before we went on the air. And when I went to post the announcement of this webinar about an hour before we're going on the air, Hermes, the contactee, had come to my Facebook profile where this is being broadcast, and had posted a video from the same extraterrestrials that he videotaped on December 30th, 2017, just a few nights ago. Now, isn't that a strange coincidence? Isn't that weird? Yeah, well, we've been planning this conversation for, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 weeks now. And
he might have gotten word of it.
Yeah.
But so what I thought what would be of interest, if I can just go here, let me get this side up. So this is, let me just go right here. Let me bring down. Now, oops.
Yeah, well, I will say while you're bringing that up that, from
Yeah,
my understanding of the contactee experiences, many of them are given messages, or conveyed certain things that seem like they're meant to be spread or given out
yeah,
more broadly. So there is an attempt to communicate either to an abductee, if that is how if that's what he feels has happened, or to communicate through them. If they
yeah.
have had extensive experiences of
Right.
invasive contact. So
So I just wanted to, for the record, and we'll go into some other material, but this is the video that
mhm,
Hermes just posted right under our broadcast. But
okay,
before I publicly announced this,
yeah,
somehow
okay.
he showed up, and this is of his.
Yeah, I'm not able to see it on my screen here.
Oh, I'm
Just
sorry. Can you see it now?
I cannot. Nope, I'm looking at the news article still.
Oh boy. Let me let let me do this then. Let me just let me get the news article out of the way.
Okay.
Whoops. Gee, I wonder why the news article is up. Obviously, this is the bleeding edge of technology. Huh. I wonder why we're still looking at the news article because let me just see where the, oh, I see. Okay. And I'll move that one back over here. So that's not the way. And then we'll bring, so this is the video that Hermes.
Yeah, I'm still just seeing your camera, Alfred. Not
Sorry?
seeing the video. But you can, if you want to roll it for the audience, and just
Well, no, we have to. Here, I didn't do that. You'll have to excuse my. Obviously,
mhm.
I'm not. Well, here, let me just.
Share your screen again, and then just navigate to it from the article page, since I was able to see that.
Okay, let me do this. It'll take just a moment here.
Sure. While you're pulling it up, just some initial thoughts that I'll share from an ally's perspective, and just interrupt me whenever you've got it up. The allies do talk a little bit about the history of contact and the new message as well. And prior to the Second World War, there were forces in our world here as observers, here to watch what our technological development was bringing about, to watch the outcome of our great wars. And they were here either as neutral or potentially beneficial influences on us. And there are some cases documented of what might have been these forces of a neutral or beneficial kind. But really, when the intervention arrived, which was after the Second World War, after the usage of nuclear weapons against one another, which really took their participation into the next level, the Allies say that those neutral and beneficial forces retreated from our space, um, primarily because of, well, partially because of the risk of operating near the intervention, given what it was, and also to do us a favor as the native peoples, to give us an unequivocal situation.
Right.
Here I think of, I just think of like the historical example of Colombia, or many parts of South America, Central America, where the Jesuit order was present on the continent, as well as the Spanish crown or the Portuguese crown. And they were there to give God to the natives. Some of them were there with a pretty aggressive intent, but some of them were there to help and to learn the language and receive and give. And there was beneficial intent there. And yet for the natives, looking at the two, how could they distinguish who was what and what was who and who was influencing who? And by and large, those beneficial forces, religious in nature, were cowed and controlled by the political forces, the economic forces that were present. And there are many kind of famous histories and stories and films about the natives opening up to a Jesuit priest or order and integrating them into their society, or having something quite beneficial occur, only to have the Jesuits be complicit in intervention. Ultimately, the card was pulled on where their allegiance stood, which was with the mother country or the monarchy, and they were pushed aside. And even their allegiances, and the trust that they gained with the locals was used, even after it had been gained. So there are many examples of that in our history, and I think I understand when the Allies say that, as challenging as it may be to hear, that there are no beneficial extraterrestrial presences in the world at this time. That was in their briefings in 1997.
There are no beneficial. So what you're saying is that there, right now, all extraterrestrial, when you say there are no beneficial extraterrestrial.
Making contact with human beings on the surface of this world. Certainly there are beneficial and free worlds, and I mean there's a lot out there, right? In the universe at large, even in our local universe. But those who are flying in our skies, establishing bases of operation on satellites in our solar system, in our world, under our oceans, engaging with government, there isn't like a half are good, half are bad, or the good ones are here to inspire and the bad ones are here to take over, and they're kind of at war with each other. It's from the Allies make it very clear that any ally, true ally of you, would not be here meddling in affairs, contacting government leaders, certainly not taking people, and that the most an ally could do is to impart information and perspective and put the keys of the kingdom back in our own hands, which is to say, you have what you need as a race to solve the problems of this world. You are not ready for contact as a world. You're divided. I mean, even if an ET, even beneficial, let alone not, were to land on the White House lawn or make a huge public display, even out of a gesture for unity, peace, would they be able to achieve that? I mean, here we are, 7 billion people. I mean, they would have half of us as friends and half of us as enemies anyway, and we would have war on a scale never seen before, potentially, just by them showing up physically, because it would be so divisive. And whose lawn did they land on? Who got the technology? Who was in the meeting? We're very distrustful of one another. And
let me ask you this: if you go into the exopolitical literature, some of the literature says this, that around the time of President Eisenhower, the U.S. had two basic choices. They may have had a number of choices, but they were two major choices, and that is that there were two extraterrestrial groups. One allied with a manipulatory group that said, we are going to give you technology if you enter into these treaties. And the treaties started with the Greada Treaty of 1954 that essentially allowed some abductions. And it was, I think it was the Orion Greys there that were kind of the front ETs, but they were fronting for the Draco reptilians and for the Anunnaki reptilians. And the other group uh, were more sort of a blonde Nordic type. And they said, we can promise you a future, however, you have to give up nuclear weapons.
Mm.
And we can promise you a good future. And apparently, Eisenhower wanted, could not overcome the force of the permanent war economy within the U.S. at that point, and they went forward with the Bravo test, which was a test of a hydrogen bomb in the Pacific, and went ahead and signed the Greada Treaty, and that's why we have a world of pedophilia and etc. Because we sort of have a quota of humans and human children that we have to deliver up galactically and in the solar system and planetarily. And that's why the FBI has been under orders not to go after missing children. I mean, like the police are under standing orders, and we've done a lot of investigating, and the number of missing children worldwide is very high. And there is a correlation to stand down orders among police. And we have the testimony of whistleblowers who have been with Interpol parties, where they go in and there are people in LA around Sunday family dinners where it's a roasted baby on instead of a roasted turkey on the dinner table. And the US has a quota of children that it delivers to Saudi Arabia every year of American children. And this is the big dirty secret, which has come out as Pizzagate, and there's a lot of fighting going on. But if you trace it back, it goes back to the Greada Treaty, which is the treaty with the Dracos and with the Orion Greys. So that the intervention now has really gotten itself inside the governments at the treaty level and inside the courts, so that all the adoption agencies now, I was just dealing with a case in Belgium where you have the adoption agencies are infiltrated, and they have the infiltration of the baby kidnap industry inside the hospitals, where they target vulnerable women who come in to give birth. And if they diagnose the woman as psychiatrically imbalanced, they can grab her baby up for adoption. Everybody makes money, and and that's all part of this culture that has come by. It's part of the intervention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's so much that we do to ourselves. There's darkness in the world, and there are forces of evil amongst humans that have been here a long time, and I definitely wouldn't doubt it. And there's not much I can say about cases like this, being that I'm not a researcher. But I can say that the intervention is taking people, and what it does and what that program is for should really be the focus of our outcry. And the Allies confirm some really amazing things that you will not hear elsewhere. This is perspective that really opens up the resistance and empowerment to the intervention in very powerful ways. A few things it says is that the intervention is a very small group of basically a small group of technologically adept forces that are playing a playbook that has been played numerous times in the greater community. They are not expecting any resistance. They are expecting complete acquiescence. They know that if one government doesn't want what they offer, another will. And it's just a matter of time. And so How that integrates into the dark corners of the human world, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised, but really important here is to understand that the intervention is running a playbook. They are not very creative. They are not anticipating dissent. And very important, this is very important, and this comes right out of the Allies briefings. We live in a highly populated region of space. Okay, now this is something I could not personally know without the briefings. So,
I see.
this is very interesting. We live in a highly populated region of space. There is no governing body over nations. There is no, galactic federation, but there is trade, and there are very powerful nations that trade together. And so there are organizations that oversee interaction at that level. Because we live in a highly inhabited, mature region of space, outright conquest is not allowed. Okay? It's not permissible and possible for a force to come and simply take a world. Way too established a region for that. Instead, what is done, contact is made, offers are made, influence is cast. And if the native people appear to want what is happening, then it's fine. Whatever, the intervention may proceed. The intervention are basically economic collectives. They are the black market. They are the ones procuring resources for more advanced worlds that would never want to put their hands in something as dark as what the intervention is doing here. The intervention is opening up a new business partner, so to speak. And as long as that business partner seems to be accepting of the terms of the deal, then the governing entities in our local region who govern trade primarily and the security of interaction for trade are not going to get involved. However, the moment the natives vocally express discontent and call this for what it is, which is a quiet integration and invasion into our world, and express their will for it to leave, the intervention must depart. And so there is an amazing opportunity. This is something we wouldn't know. Again, this is why the Allies of Humanity briefings were given. We wouldn't know that. In fact, I'll bet most people who become aware of the intervention start to feel overwhelmed, start to feel like it's impossible. They've got their fingers in every government that, and what can we do? And it's actually not like that at all. We actually have tremendous capability to stop the intervention in a very short period with not very many people involved. It's more of a vocal advocacy task than it is an investigative one or a research one. And I think that's really important for people to know. So we have the tools we need, and the intervention. There's some really important things to know alongside this. They want us to feel overwhelmed. They want us to think that their power is, if we know about their real agenda, that their power is insurmountable. We don't have what they can have. We can't defend ourselves. And so I do think that numerous conspiracy theories are actually created, manufactured by the true conspirator. And the true conspirator in our world today is the intervention. That's the big conspiracy that no one talks about. We're all fixated on each other, and there's a reason for that. It's because the intervention wants us to focus our anger and resentment and distrust towards human leadership and not towards it. It wants to focus all of our negative response to the human leaders and all of our positive spiritual response to the visitors. And when you step back and look at the world of ufology and contact and all of this, it's really bizarre that almost all negative conspiracies relate to the government or to secret groups and entities, human, and all positive messages, channeled teachings, belief systems are about the ETs. It's black and white. There's very little bleed over. And so I think, like I said before, the intervention will use anything they can. If it's religious, if it's political, if it's the black market of this world, whatever it is, if they can use it, they'll use it. As people responding to the phenomenon, it's important that we not get caught up in the controversy of every possible way they may use us and our governments, because, well, the ways are too many to say. And the really important thing is that we focus on the ET presence and demand disclosure of that presence and vocalize our discontent. because that really is what's needed. There are ears turned to our planet, local neighbors, free worlds, governing bodies watching to see our response to contact. And
Yeah.
our response has been illustrative. I mean, we welcome it. There's almost nobody asking the basic questions of, well, why is there an intruder in our house? I didn't give him permission to come in. And why should I believe him when he says he's enlightened?
Yeah.
You know, very few people are communicating that. And that is a big problem. And so
Okay.
we need to seriously activate the advocacy and activist community to get vocal. It's more communication. It's not so much calling out the government players. It's not creating more conspiracies and trying to tie everything together and say, well, there's an intervention, but there's also this, there's this. See, this is where we get off track.
Yeah.
Bill.
Now, but I just really want to go further here, because as a solution, you know, we're all looking for solutions. So you said what is needed is vocal advocacy and more investigation. Now, what would vocal advocacy look like?
Oh, great question. Yeah. Well, first off, I feel that the global community that considers the reality of contact to be real, happening, has to go beyond the first question with some courage here. It is time to ask what does it mean, and what must we do? So there's a will, there's like a threshold, a tipping point, a switch that needs to get thrown in us who are aware of this to go beyond accumulating more perspectives, more information, swamped in information. Much of it, well, some of it is absolutely good and important, but a hefty amount is manufactured to swamp us. There's tremendous distortion in this field of research too, which is problematic. So in a way, we need to kind of take the next step and get out of that and start getting to the question of, okay, what does this mean, given what we know is happening, and what must we do? Because there's a lot of stuff happening that may be dark and grim that it actually doesn't mean anything for what we must do. There's nothing you can do about it except be angry, except, get isolated in thinking about things that no one else acknowledges as real. That some of these conspiracies take you, where they actually take you, by the way, is to a place of hopelessness, isolation, and fear. That's where they deliver you. They deliver you down an alleyway. And it's not a pretty picture down there. Some of it may be real. Maybe the opening information was real. But they're sucking people down these alleyways and dispersing awareness about the intervention. So it's a great question. What does vocal advocacy look like? So as people become aware that this intervention is happening, it's critical that they take a stand in some fashion, educate others. There's, I don't know how many conferences and events a year on this topic. You will rarely hear a speaker speaking about the intervention in any way. So that discussion needs to happen. And the allies do also point to some specific steps to take. We need to start advocating for the 3 requirements for life in the universe, as described by the allies. The 3 requirements to emerge successfully into the greater community are self-sufficiency, unity, and discretion as a world. So self-sufficiency, that means that contact, the intervention, implies a major shift towards environmental advocacy. The reality of climate change has to be addressed. This is huge. If we lose our self-sufficiency, basically we are delivered to a dependent state where we're relying on foreign technology to survive in the universe. That's got to happen. Unity, we absolutely must become advocates for reconciliation and compassion and unity as much as possible. Not advocates for one political aisle or the other, not outspoken, outraged by our religion or multiple religions. We need to restore our faith in one another. And unfortunately, some of us have gone down the dark alleyway of losing our faith in one another. So they got to come back to Main Street. Everyone's got to come back to Main Street on the UFO reality. and get out of the dark alleys and get back into where the street lights are shining so we can walk down that main street and actually have an impact in the world. Because unfortunately, many of the people who can have an impact are being sidelined into conspiracies that render them basically ineffective in the world. They're suspicious, they're paranoid, nobody wants to engage with them on these topics, and so they're basically isolated and neutralized. And a lot of conspiracy theories are generated by the chief conspirator, which is the intervention, for that very reason, to disperse awareness. Oh, now you got this group and these people and this government, and you don't know where to look now. It's like you got 500 enemies in the world, when really there is an enemy. It is the intervention, and we don't need to fight it. We don't need to get violent in any way. That's not what's called for. But we need to bring our awareness back to Main Street reality. And so that does mean coming back to a message of world unity and empowerment and trust in one another. See, that is a message coupled with an environmental message and a discretion message that the world can hear. Because if we go too far down the black alleyway, in investigating the deep state or, all of these sub-realities and sub-levels, we're basically leaving the rest of the world who is not looking at this. And so the advocates are lost in the back streets. They're not on Main Street, and so that's why, many people ask me about, and Marshall, well, what about this group or this, conspiracy over here? And I can't verify half of it, but I can tell you this, it's not taking you on, it's not leading back to Main Street. The rest of the world marches on and will not listen to that stuff. But what they will listen to is a centered, grounded, clear message that contact has begun, the greatest event in human history. It is an intervention. We are the native peoples. And here's what we need to do. That is a message that hundreds of millions of people could come to hear and need to hear. So that is really what needs to happen, is back to Main Street reality and away from the dark, underground, deep state, ET conspiracy stuff, back to where the rest of humanity is living, because they need to be reached with an essential message. And I'll mention, I didn't quite mention it, but the last requirement for emerging into the greater community is discretion. And the Allies of Humanity point out many times that humanity is leaking out into space all of our communications, all of our transmissions, all of our film, all of our, cultural memes and symbology and religions, and even the way our governments work. We're basically telling the universe, we're here. This is everything about us. Feel free to study it for a decade or two. And we're exposing our society with absolutely no thought that we actually have a border to space. We have a border. And it's not that we need to defend the border against, everything, but we have a border. And what you don't do with a border is let anyone come and go at will, and let anyone take information across that border to whoever, let anyone come in from that border. So we need to start acting like a world with a solar system. We need to know that this world is ours. This is our planet of Genesis. This world does not belong to some other ET force. We were not authored by an ET force. We are not beholden to an ET force. So this is Native people awareness building time. And I think if those who are aware of this phenomenon can swallow, get the lump out of their throat and realize, okay, I've been looking at this for a long time. I am fascinated, intrigued by a lot of stuff to do with it, but it's time to go beyond fascination and intrigue and realize that this phenomenon is nature, it is real, and the rest of the world needs to be awoken to it, and will be, if not by us, by the intervention. And the intervention will shape how they want the world to see it. So we need to be active in shaping what it really is.
Right. And so have you developed like a program that you're proposing, that you're rolling out, or Is that
Well,
occurring at an organizational level, or?
well, we have a number of initiatives underway, which I'll just mention some of them. So there's a document I recommend everyone go read and share. It's called the Declaration of Human Sovereignty. It is a declaration to our local universe stating our basic rights as a native people of this world. It was modeled on the United States Declaration of Independence, a beautifully written document, powerfully states where we need to stand as a race regarding contact. That would be a document to go download, print 100 copies, and see who amongst your friends and family and colleagues needs to receive that document. Because that document crystallizes activism regarding this issue very clearly. It vocalizes it. And so there is something that you can put your voice to. That declaration is at humansovereignty.org. And that was drafted by Marshall and a number of other advocates for awareness about the intervention. So that's a great document to download and share. We have a school, and Marshall is active in teaching, and it's called the Free School of the New Message. And you can get there from the newmessage.org website. It's called School up at the top. And we have a session every year on emergence into the greater community, preparing for the greater community, and where we study a series of messages and revelations regarding how to prepare. We have a weekly chat with over 130 people from around the world every Saturday, 9 a.m. Mountain Time, where we are discussing that and other topics throughout the year. So there is a movement underway to respond to the intervention and to prepare, and to spread that awareness, to spread that fundamental truth. So there is something to step on into and to be involved in, most certainly. We also have a number of books. One of them is called Preparing for the Greater Community, and that is our next book. It's coming out in a few months. Last summer, we released a book called The Greater Community, which is really the whole introduction to this reality. And the next book to be released is Preparing for the Greater Community. There are some there's an immense amount of resources for people to read, to hear. Marshall is very active in interviewing and in public speaking, although he's limited in what he can do just of himself. I mean, this is a movement that needs voices, and the voices are not there. By and large, the people might be there, but they're silent. They're intimidated by it. They don't know what to do. The intervention is marching ahead day by day. People are being taken. The human race, its future is being altered at every level. So this is a pressing issue, and it needs people, especially those who know about contact, to finally see it for what it is. Get out of preferential thinking and get to reality. This is so clear. It's not even funny. This is an intervention. It's that clear. There will be other parameters to contact to come. There will be beneficial contact at some point in our future. And I would call the Allies of Humanity an example of that. But that is not really what we need right now. And I know that's hard for people. They really want it, and it's not now. And that's you just got to handle that. It's like, this is not what we want. Life is not what we want. Life is what is. Do you participate or not? If you don't, you go down the dark alley and you won't have much of an impact on the world. If you do, you have to kind of face what comes next. And what comes next is addressing the intervention, is addressing and advocating for the fundamental pillars of humanity's success in the greater community: self-sufficiency, unity, discretion. Engaging in advocacy, which is basically education, awareness building, and knowledge, which is the spiritual power we carry. And that is available in the book Steps to Knowledge. That's another element. We have to get out of chasing the next great idea. We have to not make the UFO field an entertainment industry where the next conference or the next speaker has an even more outrageous or salacious claim, and we're just fascinated, and everyone's trying to connect everything, which is sticking the square peg in the round hole. It's like, the truth is, Not everything is connected, and we want it to be, but reality is reality. And we know enough. We know enough after decades of research into the abduction phenomenon, into military engagement with the ET presence, reality of implants, animal mutilation, psychological influence, okay? The hybridization program. We know this now. It has been researched and revealed sufficient that we can say, yes, this is an intervention, and yes, it's time to take action and vocalize that, not amongst our own group, not just amongst those who know, or no, to the whole world. The whole world needs to know. This is the biggest event in human history. Why are we hiding in the dark corners of conspiracy? Why are we hiding there, avoiding the next step? Because the next step takes us into the world to become an advocate for human sovereignty. So that's what I feel, and that's what Marshall feels really represents the next step.
Wow. Well, it's very difficult for me to fully articulate the degree of wake-up call.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Bringing, because even myself, who's been in this field now, professionally,
Yeah.
since 1973.
Yeah.
This is always the issue. What's the intent? What's not the intent? However, I can see now through the greater community of worlds and the spiritual connection there, that is really the heart of of this larger community and infrastructure in the universe, which is now focused on Earth as a member of that community that is as you say, at a tipping point. So I really want to thank you for having come here today, and I hope that when the new book comes out, Preparing for the Greater Community, at that time we'll be even more knowledgeable. And I hope that yourself or someone else from your organization will join us around that book and see how we can begin to take this forward to a global level, because I think that this really gives a focus to a field that, I agree with you, has become very scattered and very divided, and that now has to get out of its ghetto.
Well said.
Back into the mainstream.
Yeah. Well, very well said. Yeah, I agree. And we're meant to have a difference on the whole world. This is about the whole world.
Yeah.
And so, and like you're saying, it's time for something different now. We have been around the bush on every possible scenario and every type of sighting and so forth. It's time to get to the truth of what's happening, see it for what it is.
Yeah.
So
thank you so much. I was just wondering if there's anything that perhaps you had wanted to say that you haven't been able to say, or if you just want to remind people how to get in touch with your work.
Sure, thank you for that. Well, there's one thing I want to say, at the end here, and that's, our sense of draw to this reality, our sense of innate curiosity and destiny is real. That is authentic. That's coming from a deeper place. That's not just the mind, fascinated in the phenomenon. There's something that calls to us here, and it's very deep. And we're on the right track. We're on the right track. And what that is the greater community itself. It's that larger panorama of life. And it's that essential thread of spiritual connection and communication that binds life together and moves it forward. And we've had a part in that in the past. This isn't our only go in the world. It's not the only world we've had to go in. We've been around, and there are connections we brought here We actually, we brought something into this world. It's a gift, and we can't just open it with our mind. It has to be called forth. And the reality of contact as it's happening, even though it's sober and perhaps dire looking, it activates it. It activates this part of us. And how appropriate, So this is real, this connection we have with the greater community. We brought it into the world. It's a gift we carry. It's meant to come out at this time when our age-old isolation comes to an end and the whole world slowly wakes up to this reality. This gift is meant to emerge. And but we have to know that it's not necessarily to do with those visiting our world at this moment. It's with the greater community itself. And so that's where our spiritual work or our awareness building needs to point into the greater community and then inform our humanity. But our activism, our research, what we're doing about all of this contact has to be about the reality of contact, which is not spiritual in nature. It's not an adventure in consciousness. There is a movement in consciousness. It has to do with life out there. There is a preparation for it. That has been the life work of my father, Marshall V. Summers. He has given the last 35 years to bringing that preparation forth, giving it to those who really need it and are ready for it. And so I encourage everyone, if you feel that, that speaks to you, begin the preparation for the greater community. Go to the New Message website, newmessage.org, alliesofhumanity.org, read the briefings, read the revelations, join the worldwide community of people preparing. But the contact for what it is an intervention, and it needs our clear and sober response.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alfred, and pleasure to be back with you when the Preparing for the Greater Community comes out.
Oh, great. Great, good enough. I look forward to that, and I look forward to starting on the steps. I think it's just the thing for 2018 and the year of the Earth Dog.
Good. Well, I appreciate your spirit and your openness, and you've definitely got an openness that pulls good things toward you. I can see that through the camera here. So, I think this this calls for the open-minded and the clear-hearted. And it's great to meet you and know that you're one of those people in the world.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Great. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Alfred.